At the beginning of this month, this channel topped 20,000 subscribers, and I just wanted to thank everybody who is watching. I'm not sure the subscriber count is all that important a metric for YouTube these days, and I don't tend to ask people to subscribe or set subscriber goals or anything like that, but I still think it's pretty cool. Anyway, this video is kind of a reflective piece rather than any proper forecasting or deep research. You see, I realised that this year, at the time of recording, my sum total of new video games purchased for Switch or Switch 2 in 2026 is 0. I didn't get Mario Tennis Fever, which, while I do think it looks like decent fun, it doesn't feel like a sufficiently large progression over Tennis Aces for me to justify full price at this moment. Pocopia looks pretty cool, but I'm not, truth be told, a huge devotee of Pokemon, and hence I'm unlikely to buy Fire Red or Leaf Green either, even though I didn't play the Game Boy Advance versions, and I do have a sentimental attachment to the very original Pokemon Blue, which is one of the very few Pokemon titles I've played for any significant length of time in both its original and Let's Go Pikachu versions. That also probably rules out Pokemon Champion for me. Tomodachi Life looks fun, but I can't say I'm wholly convinced that it's the kind of game that's for me. Yoshi's Crafted World was fun enough, but unless Mysterious Book really pulls out the stops, I doubt it'll be one that I look at for full price either. Virtual Boy is a bit pricey for what it is, although it does look intriguing. At the time of writing, and there may be more announcements by the time this video is launched, the only game I was really looking at potentially getting was the Super Mario Bros. Wonder DLC, but one, that doesn't count as a full game, and two, it's now out, and I'm still hesitating because it doesn't seem like there's all that much extra to get my teeth into. Now, I'll almost certainly get Fire Emblem's Fortune's Weave, although even there, I can't say the aesthetics of the game so far have made it a real wow for me, and of course Splatoon Raiders is something I'm likely to give a go when it finally drops, and I am looking forward to trying a new Star Fox, hopefully, if rumours are true. Still, 2-3 games of the first several months of the year on a new console might seem like a low number for someone keen enough on Nintendo to run a YouTube channel dedicated to the company. But the thing is, I'm actually not that desperately worried. For one thing, I must admit I'm not exactly flush with time at the moment. One of the downsides of doing a YouTube channel is that it is a massive time sink, and while the channel's income justifies me taking about half a day per working week on average to put into playing it, it takes a good deal more than that on average, which instantly cuts chiefly into my game playing time. And unfortunately this month I've been so busy that I haven't even been able to take those half days, although I'm sure I will be taking them at a later point to develop more content, particularly for later in the year. Now, when a big title I'm excited for, like Metroid Prime 4, is coming up, I need to plan my schedule to ensure I have enough content for Patreon and YouTube so that I can take the time to actually play and enjoy the game without letting the channel wither on the vine. There is also, as I'm so often reminded by people in the comments, a load of excellent third-party games that I could be getting into. But actually, the reality is when I do play, I found there's still so much that I can get my teeth into. I recently and very belatedly finished the Splatoon 3 single-player campaign and found it really excellent, something that I can't believe I left for so long. I didn't stick with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD very much in 2025, so I really enjoyed spending some proper time with the upgraded version of that game, and while I still don't rate it as highly as the iconic Tropical Freeze, I still found it much more enjoyable than I'd remembered. And there are many other games on Switch where it's been years and years since I paid them a visit, and I'm enjoying revisiting them with fresh eyes, and of course to some degree with upgraded content. There are also plenty of titles that I never gave their full due in the first place, especially those massive 100-hour type affairs like Xenoblade 3 and Xenoblade Chronicles X, the latter of which in particular I absolutely love the world of, but I still need to figure out the intricacies of the fighting system. Meanwhile, I've barely started taking a look at the new Breath of the Wild version with the new graphics and haven't even downloaded the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Tears of the Kingdom yet. These games are massive endeavours and I'm looking forward to spending a lot of time with them, but realistically, I've not got that much time to spend, so it's going to take some time to get through all this content. Then there are other games that I'd like to check out, but that I haven't yet. Mario & Luigi Brothership is one, and I constantly have Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe on my watch list if it drops in price, plus Ace Attorney has long interested me. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment will now be on that list as well, since while I'm not sufficiently enamoured with Warriors gameplay to go for it with full price, I will be interested to see what exactly is added to the Tears of the Kingdom lore, as I do like the Zelda storylines. However, there's also Nintendo Switch Online. There is just a stunning amount of content on NSO, including some really random, delightful titles. I just completely randomly came across the Game Boy version of a Konami title called Survival Kit, where you're shipwrecked on a desert island and need to survive. Apparently, it's an ongoing Konami franchise, but one that has completely passed me by. The game is the kind of title I'd have loved when I was younger, but is a bit dated now, but nevertheless was a really entertaining diversion, and it's the sort of thing that you can discover just mooching around on Nintendo Switch Online with its vast library. Then there are many titles that over the years I've just never played. The service is brimming with absolute classic titles that still hold up. There are Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tracks on the Booster Course Pass I've fancied revisiting recently because I only really played them quite a small amount near their launch, and ever since that direct last September, I've been meaning to revisit Shining Force 2, my favourite game of all time, but I haven't revisited it for several years now. And of course, there's always plenty to do on Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. Now, that's not to say that I don't want new games. Of course, I'm very excited for big new titles from Nintendo, and I certainly don't like the thought that with the way that mainline open-air Zelda releases are slowing down, I might be able to count the number of new entries I could live to see on my fingers. I've also really enjoyed the Switch 2 so far, especially Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and Metroid Prime 4. But whereas with the transition to Switch, it was mildly irritating to have to get a different console out to play older titles, with Switch 2, there's such a vast back catalogue of games that still feel incredibly fresh that it really doesn't bother me too much that the kind of games I'm really interested in aren't yet on the slate. I grant you, my experiences may be different from others, but the reality is that I suspect quite a few people are in a similar situation. After all, I went in for a significant chunk of the Switch first-party library, but even in my case there are titles I'm interested in checking out, but I never got round to. My guess is that for the vast majority of players there are dozens of games that they might potentially go in for, and tactically giving them a bit of a glow up on Switch 2 or feeding little prompts to Nintendo Today is a great way to put them back into contention. If I was worried that the Switch 2 generation was going to be a short one, I guess I'd be kind of annoyed, but I think there's every likelihood that it will stretch on well into the next decade, and since game development times are increasing ever more, I'm personally quite happy to see games take a bit longer, but hopefully be better. Of course, the correlation does not always work. Metroid Prime 4 took a long time, and although I like it a lot better than some, I don't think another 2 years in the oven would ever have fixed the issues people have with the game that were, for the most part, locked in from its very conception. Sometimes it's better to release a game sooner, take the feedback, and then start over. I love Tears of the Kingdom, but again, even if that game had launched 3 years later on Switch 2 with a completely new world of Hyrule to explore, those who didn't like the core gameplay concept might not have been hugely more enamored with it as a result of the extra time. Still, Tears of the Kingdom to me is a game that I feel like I can revisit, if not endlessly, then certainly very extensively, even having completed every shrine and dungeon. Now, from Nintendo's point of view, is any of this going to be a problem? Well, maybe. It certainly makes me less hungry for new games, and that might be a problem for Nintendo, one that possibly is in evidence with new games like Mario Tennis Fever, which potentially has not hit the kind of massive sales that previous games have, although it's a bit early to say. Even if they dip the price of the games, would it do much for them? Yes, it's true that there are certain titles that, at a slightly lower price, I might be tempted to buy, but I don't think that I'm particularly price sensitive for the very major titles which I'm super keen to try. Even at $60, Fever feels to me like a bit of a stretch compared to the games I'm already enjoying, and frankly for Nintendo, the alternative would probably be me spending on another Nintendo title, so the incentive for them to drop the price, at least as far as they're concerned in terms of getting my money, isn't as strong as you might imagine. The reality is that my Nintendo consumption is pretty much at a saturation point, so it's a case of Nintendo maintaining a steady stream of games rather than necessarily being able to accommodate more of my time. And this may be the case with quite a few of the people who became Switch superfans over the last decades. Basically, Nintendo are starting to compete with themselves, and that's a double-edged sword because while it makes further sales more challenging, it also makes them more certain. Most people don't endlessly replay old games, and they potentially have to work less hard to shift the truly major titles when they're ready, as for example the huge surge of popularity out of the gate of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom showed. But this does also make certain things trickier. Frankly, even as it stands, a number of casual audience members might not even see that Fever offers sufficient new elements over Aces to justify the extra spend, given that the game is already downloadable, a problem that previous Nintendo consoles never faced to the same extent when the market was far more focused on physical products, which would go out of stock if not purchased. Now people can look at $60 Aces and $70 FIFA and make their conclusion accordingly. But if they can build on FIFA and keep it running as a true evergreen, especially if it's potentially a decade until the next console and presumably until the next tennis game, it's quite likely that eventually I and others will leap on board. In the meantime, though, Nintendo will need to go broader and probably more experimental in order to expand their total appeal. Not every game will appeal to everybody, but the key competition will be whether they can find new players and continue to grow their audience. Also, their big new games need to really justify the time they spent in development. Still, the broader strategic issues aside, I'm kind of loving these moments where I get to boot up an old game on Switch 2 and discover it as new with the bigger screen and better graphics. I will definitely be looking forward to bigger new titles, and I do feel really bad for all those people who are absolutely desperate to have major new content to play, but right now for me, it's not something that I'm desperately worried about. For more of my personal reflections on games, do check out the videos on screen and check out the Patreon and hype, comment, share and support the channel. But all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.